The twin suns of Celesta Prime hung high in a lavender sky, their dual heat making the air shimmer as Commander Brennan Blackwood picked his way across the jagged path carved into the crystalline cliffs. The terrain was alien-sharp glowing, with flecks of mineral light, but beautiful in its own harsh way. Steam rose from distant vents, drifting lazily over the rocks like ghostly serpents. His black diplomatic armor, designed more for ceremonial presence than mountain hiking, was soaked through. Every step felt heavier. The plasma rifle slung across his back, a precaution insisted upon by Earth's Security Council, was now a cumbersome weight more than a comfort. He paused, brushing sweat from his brow and beard, and checked the nav beacon. Projected from his wrist device, the diplomatic compound, his destination, was somewhere beyond the ridge ahead. Probably air-conditioned, he thought grimly. He muttered to himself, trying to recall the latest cultural debrief. No direct eye. Contact with elders, always bow left foot forward, and something about bathing springs? The details were fuzzy. Earth's intel on Celestian ritual law had been frustratingly vague. He pushed forward, rounding a bend in the path when a sudden gust of steam billowed from a nearby pool nestled between two curved rock formations. The soft sound of splashing. Water carried through the mist. Instinct slowed his step, curiosity drawing him closer despite every diplomatic protocol telling him otherwise. The steam parted for only a moment, and in that moment, his breath caught. There, framed by light refracting through rising mist, was a woman. Pale as moonlight, her skin seemed to glow with an inner luminescence. Long dark hair flowed like silk down her back as she stood in the sacred pool, unaware of his presence. She turned slightly, just enough for their eyes to meet. Hers were impossibly dark, as if they held the void of space within them. They widened in horror. Time froze. Then she moved with elegant speed, seizing a nearby towel and wrapping it tightly around her form. But the damage had been done. "You have seen me," she said. Her voice sharp and clear despite the humidity, her accent lilting yet forceful. "Unclothed. Human." This was a mistake," Brennan stammered, raising his hands instinctively, eyes locked on her face, trying desperately not to glance downward. "I didn't mean to—" "There are no mistakes in the eyes of the springs," she interrupted, her expression stricken. "You have witnessed a sacred rite of purification. I was in communion with the truth. To interrupt such a moment, there is only one outcome." Her next word struck him like a plasma bolt. "Marriage. Or death, for both of us," he blinked. "You're serious." "I am Lady Astria of House Lysander, daughter of the High Counselor. These are the laws written before our people reached the stars." Brennan's mouth opened, then closed. He was trained to negotiate planetary trade routes and peace treaties, not arranged marriages at Towel Point. Surely there's an appeal process?" "There is not," she said, and suddenly her eyes darted to the cliff above. A long, deep horn blared through the valley, bouncing from one crystalline face to another. Her expression turned to panic. "The temple guard," she hissed. "They must have seen the breach. You have to hide." Before he could react, she grabbed his wrist and pulled him behind a cascade of steam and into a narrow crevice, a hidden cave, whose mouth was nearly invisible to the untrained eye. He ducked inside just as a group of armored figures rounded the bend, their footfalls heavy on the stone. "Lady Astria," one called out, voice formal and suspicious. "You are not scheduled for a rite today." Astria stepped from the spring with dignity, the towel now replaced with a shimmering wrap of translucent silk that clung to her like liquid moonlight. "I required solitude," she replied, voice calm but firm. "Is that not permitted? There are reports of a human male in this sector." She tilted her chin, feigning affront. "Would a human male dare violate our most sacred space? Surely you do not believe I would allow such defilement." "Brennan," crouched silently in the dark, heart hammering. Through the mist he could barely make out her silhouette. Even now she held herself like a queen addressing her court, voice smooth as cut glass. He should be planning his escape, memorizing every route back to the embassy. But instead, his mind returned to her eyes, the fear in them, the certainty in her voice, and the law that demanded he become her mate, or die beside her. The guards murmured their apologies and withdrew, leaving silence in their wake. Astria appeared at the cave entrance, eyes scanning the path before motioning him out. "They'll return once they realize I've left the spring." "We must move." He took her offered hand. It was warm, steady. "Real. You're serious about this law?" he asked, his voice quiet now. "There are no half-truths in the springs," she replied. "Only what is and what must follow." And as he followed her into the cliff's hidden paths, Brennan knew nothing on earth had prepared him for what lay ahead. The narrow trail wound through a chasm of quartz-veined stone, lit only by the refracted glow of the twin suns piercing the crystal above. Brennan followed closely behind Astria, her pale figure cutting a sure path through terrain that would have left him guessing blind. Despite the steep drop just feet away and the erratic winds funneling through the gorge, she moved with the ease of someone who had explored these cliffs 1,000 times. He, meanwhile, was trying not to trip. "You move like a shadow," he muttered, breath uneven from the climb. "That's because I've been using these paths since I was a child," she replied without turning. "They were meant to remain secret, not for human feet." "I didn't exactly schedule today's detour," he said dryly. Her pace slowed just slightly. "No, you were meant to be greeted in the palace gardens. Ceremony, music, titles. Instead, you were naked in a hot spring and I was lost." He almost laughed, but didn't. Astria stopped. Her dark eyes found his in the narrow passageway, intense and unreadable. "It was a sacred moment, Commander, not a joke. To you it may seem absurd, but to us, I know," he said quickly, holding up a hand. "I'm not mocking it, just processing." She looked at him a moment longer, then turned and pressed her hand against a crystalline outcrop. A seam appeared in the cliff wall, one he never would have noticed. A hidden door it slid open with a whisper, revealing a narrow stone corridor, veiled in cool blue light. They stepped inside. Brennan instantly felt the temperature drop. The walls hummed faintly, resonating with a power he couldn't identify. Not mechanical, something older, deeper. His boots echoed on the stone, but hers made no sound. "Where are we?" he asked. "A passage used by the ancient priesthood. Few know it exists. It leads beneath the palace. If we reach the inner sanctum, before the temple guard begin their sweep, we may still have time to discuss our options," he frowned. "So marriage and death aren't the only choices?" Astria hesitated. "Not legally, but socially? Ceremonially? My father is the High Counselor. Even he cannot defy the law of the springs, the law that binds truth to consequence." "And you believe in that? That a glimpse of something unintentional means fate decided our lives in an instant?" She paused, turned to face him. "I believe the springs reveal more than flesh, Commander. They reflect what lies beneath fear, desire, truth." That moment was not about nudity. It was about exposure. "You saw me not as Lady Astria, political pawn of House Lysander, but as a person, as I truly am." Brennan didn't reply, because she was right. That moment in the mist had stripped away every layer of protocol, of caution. Her vulnerability had stunned him. Not just the sight of her gods, she had been breathtaking, but the raw honesty of it. No titles, no scripts, just a woman alone, unguarded. "And you?" she asked softly. "What did you feel in that moment?" He should have deflected, quoted a treaty, but the humming in the walls seemed to pull truth from him. I felt like I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to. Not just your body, though yes, I noticed, but something sacred. Something private. And I didn't want to leave. Astria's breath hitched. Before she could reply, a shrill alarm echoed through the stones, a deep, throbbing pulse that made Brennan's blood go cold. They've discovered the breach point, Astria said quickly, grabbing his hand. We need to hurry. They ran. The corridor twisted and narrowed. At one point, Brennan had to duck to avoid slamming into a low-hanging arch carved with alien glyphs. The symbols pulsed as he passed, reacting to something in him. Astria noticed but said nothing. Eventually, they reached a polished stone platform. Astria knelt, pressing her palm into an indentation. The wall before them melted away into cascading light, revealing a chamber beyond that shimmered with iridescent crystal columns and a single raised pool in its center. The room was eerily quiet, beautiful, sacred. This is the sanctum of essence, Astria whispered. Few ever enter it. The waters here are older than recorded memory. Brennan looked at her. And you brought me here? I needed you to see, she replied, stepping into the chamber. This is what they're willing to kill us to protect. She approached the central pool, its waters glowing faintly. The springs choose. They always have. That's why our people obey their judgment. It's not superstition. It's history. And what did they choose exactly? He asked quietly. You. Her voice didn't waver. They chose you. Not Kalen, not one of our nobles. You, a human. The name struck him like a thrown blade. Kalen? Lord Kalen of House Marion. A noble of considerable power. He's been petitioning for my hand for months. My father hesitates, but he cannot refuse forever. Brennan exhaled slowly. So this? Accidental encounter just destroyed a power deal. No, her gaze met his. This accidental encounter just saved me from a lifetime of being owned. The silence between them pulsed with something unspoken. Tension, understanding, recognition. Then, distant voices echoed down the passage behind them. Temple guards. Closer now, Astria turned back to the pool. If they find us here, they will not wait for a trial. Then let's keep moving, Brennan said. She looked over her shoulder at him, hesitated, and then nodded. There's a passage behind the sanctum. But before we go, one thing. She stepped close, so close he could see the fine shimmer of energy beneath her skin. You must decide, Brennan. If we're found, you'll be named my mate before the council. There is no reversing it once declared. But if you leave me now, if you run, I will not stop you. He studied her face, the strength behind her poise, the fear she tried so hard to conceal. I'm not going anywhere, he said quietly. Her breath caught. The pool behind her glowed brighter, responding to something unseen. Then the springs have spoken, she whispered. And in that moment, with danger approaching and ancient laws binding them tighter than chains, Brennan knew there was no turning back. The grand chamber of the Celestian High Council shimmered like the inside of a living jewel. Crystalline walls towered overhead, refracting the light of the twin suns into radiant shafts of shifting color blue, silver, and violet. The air was perfumed with sweet incense that clung to the senses like memory, and yet the scent couldn't mask the tension in the room. Each of the attending nobles, narrow-faced, silver-garbed, impossibly poised, sat behind intricately carved podiums that spiraled upward like vines from the crystal floor. Commander Brennan Blackwood stood at the center of the chamber, his black Earth ambassador uniform creased and travel-worn. He had stripped off the outer layers of armor, but kept the ceremonial sash of his station, a pale attempt at dignity under the intensity of 1,000 watching eyes. Beside him, calm and composed in a robe of layered starlight and silk, stood Lady Astria. She had summoned them all. And now, before the eyes of Celesta Prime's ruling elite, she was about to defy them. "You claim," said High Counselor Lysander Astria's father, his voice deep, resonant, and heavy with restrained fury, "that this human has seen you in the sacred springs, that the ancient law binds you now. You expect this council to accept such a claim without witness or precedent?" Astria didn't flinch. "I expect the council to obey the laws it swore to uphold, the laws of the springs." A murmur rippled. Through the chamber offended whispers, thinly veiled outrage. Brennan felt eyes burrowing into him from every angle. Not one of them wanted him here. Not one of them believed he belonged. "Let me be clear," Lysander continued, rising to his feet. His robe shimmered with crystalline inlays that responded to the pitch of his voice. "You are my daughter. Your path was to be joined with Lord Kalen of House Marion, a union that would stabilize the northern provinces and unify the old bloodlines. You cannot discard that future for a breach of privacy with an off-worlder." Astria met her father's gaze with cool defiance. "That future was never mine to want." The words hung like a guillotine blade. Before the High Counselor could respond, a new figure entered through the rear gate. Silence fell as she stepped forward, robed in white, hair silvered with age, eyes pale and unblinking. The Oracle of the Springs. Even Lysander bowed. "Oracle Nera," he said respectfully. "This is an unexpected," the Springs summoned. "Me," she said, her voice soft but carrying effortlessly through the chamber. They stirred with new life the moment the human's presence touched their waters. "I came to read their echoes." Lysander's mouth pressed into a hard line. "And what did the echoes say?" The oracle looked first at Astria, then at Brennan. Her stare lingered, searching. Her voice became breath, half chant and half prophecy. Two lights became one in the steam, unbidden, unseen. A moment not of choice but of convergence. What was hidden was revealed. What was silent, spoken. The bond formed not of want, but of truth. Gasps echoed around the chamber. Even Lysander faltered. The Springs, she concluded, chose him. Lord Kalen rose suddenly from his place near the eastern dais. Tall, pale, and severe, his expression was unreadable, but the tension in his jaw gave him away. "Chose him?" He repeated, tone clipped. "A human? An outsider? You'd claim the waters our holiest relic have approved, eh? Diplomatic accident?" Brennan opened his mouth, but Astria spoke first. "It was not an accident," she said. "Not truly. The law doesn't care about intent. You all know that. The law exists to protect the sanctity of truth. Brennan saw me pure, unveiled, unmasked. We are bound." "Convenient," Kalen muttered, "that your honor is saved by declaring yourself wed to a foreigner." Brennan stepped forward now, locking eyes with the noble. "You think I wanted this? That I asked for any of this? I was lost, exhausted, and trying to find your damn diplomatic complex. I stumbled into something I didn't understand, and instead of killing me on the spot, she gave me a chance to live. And now? I'll honor that choice. I'll stand by her. And if that threatens your precious bloodlines, Lord Kalen, maybe you should be asking yourself why." Kalen's eyes darkened. "You dare lecture me. Enough," the oracle said. Sharply. Her voice held the weight of centuries. "There is another matter. The child." Every voice in the room stilled. "What child?" Lysander asked, his face hardening. The oracle turned to Astria. "You carry it already, do you not?" Astria's hand went to her abdomen. "I suspected. The connection we formed, it was strong, immediate. I hadn't spoken of it yet." Lysander took a stunned step back. Kalen went pale. The chamber erupted in a chaos of overlapping voices. Brennan felt the world tilt beneath him. "A child? Ours?" The oracle raised her hands, calling. "Silence. This union has already borne fruit. The child is no ordinary being. I have seen his shape in the waters, the first of a new era. Half human, half Celestian, whole truth. Lysander staggered back to his seat. Kaelin stood frozen, a statue of thwarted ambition. The oracle turned toward the council. To deny this. Union now is to deny the springs, and to deny the springs is to declare yourself above the will of our ancestors. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Lysander, trembling slightly, nodded. If the springs have chosen, we will not defy them. Astria closed her eyes, relief washing over her features. Brennan, still reeling, took her hand. It fit perfectly into his. But far above the chamber, in a tower veiled in shadow and crystal, a whisper echoed through the surveillance corridors. Lord Kaelin was already preparing his counterstroke, and this time he would not rely on politics or tradition. He would seek out the forbidden archives and the old powers that predated even the springs. The moonstones embedded in the palace ceiling pulsed with soft blue light, mimicking the slower rhythms of Celesta Prime's night cycle. Yet despite the calming glow, Brennan's heart pounded like a war drum. He sat on the edge of a crystalline lounger, its surface strangely warm beneath his hands, watching Astria speak with Dr. Alara, the chief medical researcher, and one of the few Celestians who hadn't treated him like an anomaly. The medical suite itself was a marvel. Walls that reacted to thought, diagnostic tables made from liquid light, and bioscanners that whispered instead of beeped. Still, none of it calmed him, because moments ago he'd heard the impossible. "You're sure?" he asked, voice low but intense. Dr. Alara turned, her expression unreadable but her eyes gleaming with what could only be described as scientific awe. "I've confirmed it thrice now. Lady Astria is with child. Approximately 4 cycles along your Earth calendar would measure it at just under 1 month. But that's where the similarities end." Astria, standing serene in her flowing robe, gave Brennan a look that softened his panic. "It happened fast. I felt the change almost immediately after the sanctum." Brennan stood. "You mean after the ceremony, or after?" Astria arched a brow. "After both. You seem to inspire rapid biological outcomes, Commander." He flushed, but Dr. Alara stepped forward, lifting a floating holodisplay between them. "It's more than that. Your union has awakened dormant strands within our genome. Genetic code we thought long lost, buried beneath eons of evolution. Your DNA didn't merely combine with Lady Astria's, it activated something ancient." "What does that mean?" Brennan asked. "That the child is what? A hybrid?" Alara turned the hologram toward him. It displayed a glowing sequence, pulsing, shifting, fluid. "Not just a hybrid, a bridge. Your species carries adaptability encoded at a level we've never seen. The child is evolving as it grows. It's rewriting our assumptions about interspecies compatibility." Astria placed a hand over her abdomen, her eyes wide, not with fear, but with wonder. "It's as if the springs knew. As if they chose you not just for me, but for what we could create." But Brennan wasn't ready to be mystified. "And what about risks? To her? To the baby?" "We're monitoring it closely," Alara said. "So far, Lady Astria shows only elevated energy readings and mild physiological acceleration, nothing dangerous. If anything, the pregnancy seems to be stabilizing her aura." She hesitated. "There's one more thing." Brennan tensed. "What?" Alara projected a new sequence. "The child's aura is resonating with crystal matrices across the palace. Certain ancient symbols within the walls have begun to glow again. Symbols tied to ... prophecy." Astria blinked. "You mean the old legends?" "Yes," Alara said. "The one born of 2. The echo of star blood. the one meant to unify lost paths. Before they could absorb that, a sharp chime echoed through the medical chamber. The walls dimmed. An alert blinked red. Unauthorized access to the archive vault. A voice announced. Astria turned, eyes narrowing. That's deep beneath the springs. What could anyone want down there? Brennan answered before the others could. Lord! Kalen, Alara's face went pale. That section is sealed for a reason. The artifacts stored there. The remnants of pre-spring culture. Forbidden's relics. Astria's voice dropped. Separation tools. Brennan stared at her. What? Do you mean? Before the era of the springs, our ancestors experimented with ways to sever spiritual bonds between individuals. Ritual unbindings. Biological decoupling. They were dangerous. The practices were banned after the Wars of Succession, but... Kalen might think, Brennan said, connecting the dots, that he can use them to sever what we formed. Me. You. The baby. The chamber vibrated softly, the crystals humming in low distress. Alara's fingers danced over a control surface. If he's in the archive vault, he's already bypassed 3 layers of sacred seals. The only reason the system didn't alert us sooner is because he must have had help from within. Astria's lips tightened. Traitors among the noble houses, or worse, Alara added. Old blood cults. There are whispers they never died out. They believe Celestian purity must be preserved at all costs. Let's not wait to see what he plans, Brennan growled. We strike first, Astria nodded. We confront him, now. But Alara stepped between them. Wait, you can't face Kalen unprotected. He's desperate and worse, he's invoking. Old magic. You don't understand what those tools can do. They don't just end bonds. They rip them from the soul. Brennan met Astria's gaze. I don't care what kind of ancient magic he's bringing. If he tries to harm her, our child, I will end him. Astria reached out and took his hand. And I will end him beside you. From the shadows of the medical suite, a low voice interrupted. Then perhaps we should go together. The oracle stepped forward, flanked by 2 silent acolytes. I feared this day would come, she said, her tone weighted with grim resolve. Lord Kalen has broken the law of the springs. His soul is forfeit. But before you face him, you must. Prepare through the ritual of harmony. Brennan blinked. Harmony? The oracle inclined her head toward Astria's belly. The child must be shielded. What you carry is not merely life. It is legacy. Outside the chamber, alarms still echoed. The palace shuddered beneath its elegant stillness, as if bracing for the storm to come. Brennan looked to Astria, fire kindling in his chest. They had faced death, politics, prophecy, and tradition. Now they would face something darker, and they would face it together. The wind howled through the outer towers of the Celestian palace, bending the crystalline spires with a sound like distant singing. Beneath the main structure, in the forbidden depths known as the archive vault, the air was colder, older. Here, where the sun's light could not reach, knowledge that predated Celesta's golden age lay buried under layers of secrecy, silence, and blood-bound seals. Lord Kalen moved through the shadows like a man possessed. His ceremonial robes were torn, his face slick with sweat, and his fingers trembled as they hovered over the final lock. Behind him, 4 lesser nobles watched nervously, each bearing sigils of ancient houses long thought dissolved by peace and time. They whispered among themselves in a half-forgotten tongue, eyes darting toward the obsidian archways and carved glyphs lining the chamber walls. I told you this was madness, one of them hissed. The oracle will know. The springs see everything, Kalen spun, his voice a snarl. The oracle is blind, blinded by prophecy and human corruption. The springs have been poisoned. If we don't act now, our kind will be diluted into myth. But the tools, Another noble breathed, eyes wide with reverence and fear. They weren't meant to be used again. Kalen turned back to the altar. The seal glowed with crimson lines, each one pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. He pressed his palm to the final sigil, a symbol not seen in public ritual for 300 years, the mark of severance. The seal cracked open. Beyond it lay a darkened chamber filled with floating relics encased in stasis fields, knives that shimmered with unnatural sharpness, orbs of blood crystal pulsing with trapped soul light, cloaks woven from the memories of dying prophets, and at the center, on a pedestal of petrified flame, a relic older than even the oracle's records, the sundering diadem. Kalen reached for it with shaking hands. Above, Brennan stood in the ritual hall with Astria, facing a circle of high acolytes and the oracle herself. Around them, symbols carved into the floor flared with radiant light. It wasn't heat he felt, but resonance. A kind of pressure against his soul, as though the air itself was judging him. "Do you understand the risk?" Oracle Nera asked. Voice somber. "The ritual of harmony is no simple bond. It ties not only your bodies and emotions, it ties your essences. If Kalen succeeds in his heresy, he may shatter you from within. This ritual will make such asunder impossible, but only if both of you offer everything, no lies, no walls." Astria turned to him, and for the first time since the Springs, Brennan saw fear flicker in her eyes, not for herself. For him. "I've already given you everything," he said softly. She reached for his hand. "Then give me the rest." The ritual began. The acolytes chanted in spiraling rhythms, their voices overlapping like layers of wind. The room shifted, warping, folding into something deeper. The walls glowed with the color of memories. Brennan saw flashes of Astria's past, her as a child running through the crystal gardens, her alone in the temple, her weeping behind the palace curtain after rejecting another suitor. Then she saw him battle-scarred, armored, standing beside. His mother's grave on earth, his first assignment, his fears, his ache for something more than duty. Their minds opened. Their spirits touched. And then they fell into each other. It felt like falling through time. And when it was done, they stood together on a platform of light, breathing hard, skin glowing faintly. The oracle bowed her head. "You are sealed. Number. Magic, old or new, can separate you now without shattering the stars themselves." Brennan turned to Astria. "Then let him come?" Kalen was already climbing the temple spire. The diadem pulsed against his forehead, tendrils of dark energy weaving down into his spine. His eyes glowed red with borrowed power, and every step left scorch marks along the floor. Guards who attempted to stop him fell screaming as their soul links were forcibly torn, bonds meant for lovers, family, or faith, undone by the sundering. Magic he wielded like a whip. He entered the high sanctum with a scream that cracked glass. "Where is she?" Oracle Nera appeared from behind a veil of light. "You have defiled every law," she said. "Even the ones your house helped write." "I restore them," Kalen hissed. "I return us to purity, to strength. That child, that thing she carries, it is the end of us." "You are the end," Nera said coldly, "and you've already failed." From the far end of the sanctum, Brennan and Astria stepped forward. Their hands were clasped, their bodies glowing faintly with the afterlight of the ritual. Even their footfalls seemed to hum in perfect sync. Kalen's eyes widened as the diadem trembled. The bond he had come to destroy could not be touched. "No," he shouted, raising his hand. "I will not be undone by a human." He unleashed the full force of the diadem. A storm of soul fire erupted, ribbons of darkness, meant to shred spiritual connections, dissolve love, sever devotion like threads. It slammed into them. And shattered. The room exploded in light, not darkness. Light. The bond that had been forged not just by law, but by truth, by choice, by soul, flared outward like a star going nova. The diadem cracked in half. Kalen screamed as its power fed back through his spine and into his mind, and then he collapsed, smoke rising from his body. When the light faded, Brennan stood over him. "You came to break us," he said quietly. "But all you did was prove. We were never broken." Kalen didn't reply. He couldn't. Acolytes moved in to bind him in crystal cuffs. Oracle Nera stepped forward. "Take him to the Vault of Echoes. Let him hear, again and again, what the springs chose." Astria pressed a hand to her belly. Her face was wet with tears, but she was smiling. Brennan stepped beside her and kissed her temple. "You held me together," he whispered. "No," she whispered back. "We held each other." And beneath her skin, the child stirred, resonating with the storm that had passed, the unity that had withstood it, and the future that waited just beyond the stars. The sacred alignment approached. Twin suns rose in tandem, their golden light converging on the horizon like celestial lovers long destined to reunite. Across the crystalline terraces of Celesta Prime, bells chimed in harmonic sequence tones that vibrated through the bones of every citizen, through every crystal spire and stone foundation, announcing the rarest of cosmic moments. The convergence day. It was on this day once every 6 years that the spring sang loudest. It was on this day that the wedding between Lady Astria and Commander Brennan Blackwood would bind not only two souls, but two civilizations. But fate, as ever, had no intention of honoring calendars. Astria gasped and doubled over in her dressing chamber, clutching her stomach as a violent pulse of energy radiated through her body. Her aides cried out, rushing to her side, but none could touch her. The air around her was shimmering, vibrating, pulsing with waves of harmonic light. The unborn child had awakened. Brennan barged through the ornate door moments later, half dressed in his ceremonial armor, his eyes wild. "Astria?" "I'm fine," she managed through gritted teeth. "He's just eager." Dr. Alera appeared from behind him, flanked by medical adepts. "Her vital signs are stable," she said, reading from a hovering datasphere. "But the child is accelerating again. The energy fields around its developing core are synchronizing with the sun's convergence." Brennan stared at the readings. "You're saying our baby ... is timing his own birth with the solar alignment?" "I'm saying," Alero replied carefully, "that the child knows when he's meant to arrive, and it's not at midnight. It's now." In the heart of the palace temple, preparations for the wedding had already begun. Choirs rehearsed harmonies, tuned to Celestian soul frequencies. Nobles arrived in gleaming robes and holographic silks. Earth envoys and Galactic Union delegates filled the skyport. The diplomatic and spiritual union of human and Celestian bloodlines was about to be witnessed by the galaxy. But in the shadowed corridors below, the last whisper of resistance coiled like a snake. Lady Mara, sister of the disgraced Lord Kalen, paced before a group of masked figures cloaked in obsidian. "We failed once," she hissed, "but the child is not yet born. Their union is still incomplete." Acolyte spies bowed to her. The artifacts retrieved from the vault were shattered by the spring's backlash. "But we've uncovered something older, deeper." From a concealed satchel, one of them pulled a stone etched with writhing runes. Unlike the shimmering, luminous carvings of the springs, this relic was dull. Its surface pulsed with slow, rhythmic hunger. Mara smiled. "If we cannot sever their bond, we will devour it from within." In the temple sanctum, Oracle Nera stood beside Astria, who now lay on a bed of levitating crystal, her body surrounded by soft spectral flames. Brennan knelt beside her, his hand clasping hers. "I should be worried," he murmured. "You're giving birth in a floating sanctum surrounded by alien fire, with your soul tethered to mine and a galactic crowd waiting to applaud. Astria's lips curved into a tired smile. This was never going to be a normal wedding. He kissed her. Knuckles, watching the pulse of energy ripple across her skin. The baby's aura had now grown so powerful that the sanctum's ancient stones had begun to glow with forgotten colors, reds, golds, even shades of emotion Brennan couldn't name. The alignment begins, Oracle Nera intoned. Prepare the invocation. Celestian choirs outside began to sing. The harmonies seeped into the sanctum walls, and the walls answered with light. Say your vows, Nera said. Let the universe hear. Brennan swallowed, then took Astria's face gently in both hands. I saw you once, without knowing your name. In the moment between law and accident, I saw a truth I couldn't forget. I didn't come here looking for love, but I found a reason to fight for it. Astria, glowing with sweat and divinity, answered, You were not born under our stars, but you are the answer to one of our oldest prayers. The spring saw it before I did. But when I looked into your eyes, I saw my future and my child's. The walls pulsed. Their souls pulsed and with a cry that echoed like thunder across light. The child was born. The moment his body entered the world, a column of light burst from the springs, shooting into the sky like a beacon. Every crystal on the planet shimmered. Every soul felt it. Every bond on Celesta Prime hummed with resonance. But so did something else, Lady. Mara activated the relic. Darkness coiled beneath the palace floor. A shadow crept up through forgotten tunnels, reaching for the sanctum like a parasite seeking warmth. It whispered with forgotten hunger. The force was not like Kalen's tool of severing. This was annihilation. An ancient hunger from a time before truth had names. Oracle Nera gasped. It's the void echo banished before the first springs. They seek to corrupt the child's bond. Brennan was already moving. He took the child, still glowing with starlight, and pressed his forehead to the infant's. You're not taking him. Astria stood, defiant despite her exhaustion, arms raised, channeling energy through her soul bond. The sanctum trembled. The dark tendrils burst into the room, but they did not consume. The child opened his eyes. They shone with gold and white and deep, cosmic violet, and the darkness recoiled. A blast of radiant power erupted from the infant's chest, and for the first time in known history, an ancient darkness fled the light of a newborn. After the explosion of energy, silence returned to the sanctum. Slowly, reverently, the crystal walls resumed their glow. The infant floated gently down into his mother's arms, content and cooing. Oracle Nera wept. The prophecy is complete, she said, and yet it is only the beginning. Astria kissed her son's forehead. What shall we name him? Brennan looked at the twin suns now aligned above the skylight. Lyran, he said. It means bright bridge in old Earth, Astria smiled. And in old Celestian, it means he who binds the scattered light. They kissed beneath the convergence. Outside, the galaxy waited. A single year had passed since the convergence, and the world had become something altogether new. The twin suns of Celesta Prime rose over a land transformed. The crystalline spires of the palace no longer stood alone as monuments to an insular culture, but now glittered beside new towers constructed of both Celestian quartz and Earth's alloy composites. Flags from two worlds fluttered side by side in the breeze. The song of the spring still whispered through the air, but now, so did laughter in languages once thought too distant to harmonize. At the heart of it all stood Lyran, the bridge of two bloodlines, the echo of prophecy made flesh. He floated just above the garden terrace, tiny hands glowing with gentle pulses of light as he shaped luminous threads in the air-crude patterns, for now, but unmistakably deliberate. Brennan stood close by, arms folded, trying and failing to look unimpressed. "Your son's shaping harmonic fields at the age of 1, said High Counselor Lysander with a bemused grunt. "When you were 1, you were chewing sand." "That sand made me the man I am today," Brennan replied, smirking. Lysander, once rigid and cold, had grown warmer, especially when Laran called him Granda in both Celestian and English. The old warrior still carried his staff like a blade, but his heart had softened. They watched as Astria stepped into the garden, her presence still luminous. She had never truly returned to being a noble's daughter or temple priestess. Instead, she had become something else, a mother, yes, but also a living symbol. Her image had become part of a new Celestian crest etched in fireglass beside Brennan's. Together, they were no longer anomaly. They were origin. "Tomorrow the first ship launches," she said, taking Brennan's hand as they gazed toward the horizon. The Unity Ark shimmered beyond the cliffs, a hybrid vessel designed for more than trade or diplomacy. It was a colony seed ship, bound for a new world where Celestian human unions could thrive without fear or legacy-bound prejudice. "I still can't believe they named it after our son," Brennan muttered. "Would you have preferred they name it after the first thing you said when you saw me in the Springs?" He blushed. "Fair." Astria leaned in. "Besides, the Lyran's dawn has a poetic ring to it. You know, for a name born from accidental naked diplomacy." They shared a laugh, soft, private, the kind of laugh only two people bound by everything could share. But the lightness faded when a shadow passed overhead. A starship, black, angular, silent, drifted into view above the palace. Unlike Celestian vessels or Earth cruisers, this one bore no markings. Oracle Nera appeared beside them without making a sound. "I felt it," she said. "It comes from beyond the mapped spheres." Lysander's hand tightened on his staff. "Is it a threat?" The Oracle closed her eyes. "Not yet. But it is drawn to the Convergence Child." A cold wind swept the garden. "Someone, or something, heard the Springs when they cried out at Lyran's birth," she continued. "Something ancient, something watching." Astria stepped between the Oracle and her son. "If it comes for him, it won't be alone," Brennan said, pulling his rifle from beneath the garden bench and checking the charge. "Because it'll have to go through me. Again." That night, beneath the stars, Brennan and Astria stood on the ceremonial balcony of the unified palace. Thousands watched below, beings from dozens of worlds. News drones hovered quietly. The Springs pulsed with light in the distance. "We gather," the Oracle said to the crowd, her voice echoing through amplifiers laced with crystal harmonics, "to witness the end of an age and the beginning of another." She gestured to Brennan and Astria. They defied law not with rebellion, but with truth. They obeyed the ancient code in its truest form: vulnerability, courage, love. The crowd shimmered with reflected starlight. Lyran floated in a beam of radiance, cradled by Astria. Glowing faintly with his now familiar golden hue, Nera continued, "And now we cast our gaze forward. Not toward war, not toward empire, but toward bonding. Toward what happens when souls dare to see each other fully." Brennan stepped forward. He had no script. "Just a heart. I came here expecting diplomacy. What I found was destiny. Not because the stars chose me, but because I chose to stay when it would have been easier to run." He turned to Astria. "And because you let me see you really see. I saw everything I'd been missing." Their hands found each other. They spoke together. "Let this be the bridge." When the crowd erupted, the stars answered because in the shadow of the watching void ship, another light bloomed across the sky. A rift, not violent, not hostile, a shimmer like another set of springs. In space, through it emerged beings not like Celestians or humans, ethereal, curious. The oracle's eyes widened. They were the ones who gave us the springs before we named them. The crowd watched, breath held. The lead being extended, what could only be described as a tendril of light. Reaching toward the child in Astria's arms, Leran raised his hand in response, and the two touched. A pulse went through every living thing in the plaza. An emotion no one could name, a memory no one had lived. A future already calling, and then the being spoke, not in sound, but in thought. At last, you have awakened the bridge. We welcome you home. The portal remained open, an invitation, rather than a threat. Brennan turned to his Astria. She smiled. I told you the springs don't make accidents. He laughed, holding their son close. No, he said, they make legends. And together, they stepped toward the light.